they weren't saying it wasn't aliens. Like each one that I spoke to, they almost whispered it. They didn't want to say it, but it was like, it's so weird and it's so disturbing and it's so awful that they don't know who or what committed these crimes.
Hi, I'm Scott Leadingham. Thanks for joining us here in the unique Northwest. Today I'm joined by Anna King in the Tri-Cities. Thanks for joining us today, Anna.
Sure.
Like always, Anna has been out and about reporting on various stories in the region, and we start at the Bonneville Dam and a lock that's been shut down there, affecting river traffic. Anna, tell us what's going on and when it will reopen.
Well, Scott, September 30th is the day that it'll reopen. All the wheat farmers I've been talking to are really upset about this dam being closed because there's a broken sill on the dam, which is kind of the part underneath where the lock gate goes and seals against the dam, and that has been cracked. And what's really a problem there is that they don't want the crack to get worse and for the dam to be compromised, so they had to stop river traffic. But all these wheat farmers in the middle of their harvest are really upset because this is the main portal, the end goal to get to the sea where they can ship their products around the world. And without this access, they're trapped. And all of these barges are lining the river, up and down the river, docked and moored off because they can't go anywhere. And that means a lot of wheat is not moving to the market. And competitors could be stealing that market share when they can't deliver Northwest wheat.
So let's back up a little bit. You started talking about this, but I'm just really curious. Let's give some people an overall view of how much goods really go through this area, backing up not all the way just up the Columbia River, but up the Snake River, all the way to Lewiston, Clarkston, Idaho, and Washington there. On the confluence of the Snake and the Clearwater Rivers, there's a lot of goods that are sitting there. Give us a little bit of an explanation about just how vital a route this is for goods to get in and out of the region, and from further beyond, how vital the rivers are for the transport of goods all around the world.
Well, these kinds of products like wheat are really bulky, Scott, and so to move them, there's just not a very good way to move this kind of product unless it's a barge. The barges can just take so much more capacity. And so wheat, other types of grain, corn, soy, all of these types of products are brought over to the river system and then shuttled down the river in great volumes. And especially in the October-November timeframe, that's when some of the most wheat goes down the river because it's right after harvest. All of the grain has been collected into these ports and into these co-ops, and it's ready for shipment. And a lot of the countries have been waiting for these new wheat products to come out, and so they're ready to re-up their stores. But the problem is if they're not able to buy wheat or other grains from the U.S., they might go to Australia, they might go to Russia, they might go to some other country to fill that wheat order in the time frame that they want.
So let's also, maybe play a little bit of armchair quarterback. Maybe the response would be, well, if the dam is closed and the barges can't get through, why not just ship everything through rail or by road? What's the big deal? So what's the response to that?
Yeah, there is just so much volume, like I said, on these barges. Each tugboat, let's say, could carry maybe 7 to 8 barges downriver at one time. And each of those barges is just full to the gunnels of wheat. And so that much volume on trains just takes a lot longer train, takes more shipments of trains, and the rail space to do that work is already taken up by other products that is not wheat. So sometimes they're not even able to schedule a train for wheat that isn't scheduled already. These things happen months in advance, years in advance, and so the rail space just isn't available sometimes to take up the slack that is needed by no barge traffic. So they're hoping to just resist, hold tight for a couple of weeks, and that then the barge traffic can resume and they can really push wheat downstream.
Well, interesting. Thanks for covering that. On to another topic. I don't know if cattle and beef is exported through the barge system there, but cattle are certainly raised in the inland Northwest, particularly remote, vast, open areas of eastern Oregon. And you were recently down there covering quite a bizarre story, I might say, about cattle deaths, bizarre ones being mutilated and left for dead. Tell us more about what you found and what's going on.
So, Scott, I went into some really remote areas. It was so remote that I didn't even get to text my husband for about 2 days to tell him that I had arrived and I was alive and fine. It was really remote country. I call it bar none. That's when you have no bars on your cell phone at all. But down in Southeast Oregon, in those areas between Burns and John Day, there was 5 young bulls were killed. And they were in really remote country. I was actually able to go up with a rancher into a really remote part of this ranch that and see one of these mutilated bulls. The cattle have missing genitals, tongues, and blood, but the rest of the animals are totally untouched. We were on a ranch the size roughly of Chicago. It's a massive chunk of ground, and we had to drive for more than like an hour, hour and a half to get to this animal. The investigators say that these animals are not the victims of poisonous plants, let's say, that sometimes can kill animals on the rangeland. They weren't the victims of a cougar. They weren't the victims of other predators. They weren't, shot. So the way in which these animals were killed is really mysterious. In fact, no coyotes, rodents, buzzards, or any other kind of bird really were touching the animals that I went and saw. That's really unusual in this kind of country. Usually an animal doesn't last for more than a day or even a week out in this kind of country, and nothing was touching them. Something was wrong. And these crimes are happening in such remote country that people know every pickup. People know the people that should be there and shouldn't be there in the landscape. They're their neighbors because it's such remote country. There's not very many people. So people see things. And no tracks, no weird people have been seen. And this has happened like this in other places in the West. And in fact, since my story came out, people are contacting me, telling me about their stories and sending me pictures of their animals that this has happened to. So it's really disturbing for the people that this has happened to. They don't forget the experience, and they always wonder what happened.
So that's some of the how and the where this is happening, and you alluded to it, but just expand a little bit more on some of the maybe outlandish or out of the ordinary theories that have been called in to particularly the Harney County Sheriff's Office there in Oregon. What have you seen and what have they heard from callers?
So after they started getting calls at the Harney County Sheriff's Office on this case, when it became public, they started this whiteboard where they wrote in green marker all of the different things that people are saying that it could be. And so people are saying, aliens, Bigfoot, the North Vietnamese army, alien ships, sharks with laser beams. So there's a lot of outlandish theories out there. People are really wondering what this could be.
So obviously some outlandish theories, but something is causing this. And for those involved, the ranchers who are having this happen to them now and in the past, you talked to one who it happened to in the 80s, how are they feeling? Like, what does it do to them and their nerves and how they sleep at night and things like that?
I talked to several people in person that this has happened to, and the thing that I came away with from all of those discussions is that these are solid ranching people. They're very grounded people. They don't believe in a lot of outlandish things. They're skeptics. They're, generally Republican. They're just really grounded people. And when I talked to them, they weren't saying it wasn't aliens. Like, each one that I spoke to, they almost whispered it. They didn't want to say it, but it was like, it's so weird and it's so disturbing and it's so awful that they don't know who or what committed these crimes. And they've never forgotten it.
So there's obviously some investigation going on there at the local sheriff's office, you said, in Central Oregon. But what about in a larger sense? Ranching and grazing is regulated on public lands by the federal authorities, by the Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, to name two agencies. Are they saying anything about any sort of investigation? Are they involved at all?
So I went to the local Harney County area offices of both the BLM and the Forest Service, and I asked to speak to managers there. When I did get in touch with people in charge, they didn't want to comment, and they said there was no investigation that they were aware of. I also called the FBI and wrote to the FBI and asked if they were conducting an investigation. And they wrote me an email back that said they could confirm nor deny that they were having an investigation. So basically no information. I also called back the Harney County Sheriff's Office deputy who spoke to me originally, and I said, are you aware of any FBI or Forest Service or BLM investigation? He said some people from the Forest Service did go out to see one of the carcasses, but that he was not aware of any other investigation going on.
Unnerving story, and I'm suddenly hearing the X-Files theme song in my head from my days watching it long ago. So thank you, Anna, for covering this interesting and bizarre story for us.
You're welcome, Scott.
You can see these stories that we talked about today and others that Anna covers from the Northwest on our website, nwpb.org. Thank you for joining us here in the unique Northwest.